Thank you everyone for coming here today. I'm going to be talking about how to expand Docker desktop possibilities with something that we call extensions. My name is Bernalte. I'm a senior front-end engineer at Docker. I'm from Spain. And here's my Twitter handle in case you can ask me any question about this talk or anything in particular. So yeah, let's get started. Yeah, I was going to ask how many of you use Docker desktop in your day, but the question was just asked. So for those of you who don't know what Docker is a software that's going to enable you to separate your application code from your infrastructure code so that you don't have to worry about your deployments. And every time you deploy your application, it would be in these boxes called containers, and the same container would be deployed everywhere, right? So you get the benefit of deploying the same thing over and over for your environments. Now, for those of you who use Docker your day-to-day, do you use Docker extensions? Do you know what they are? Please, if you use Docker extensions. No? No one? All right. So this is a new feature that we've been working on. And the problem that Docker extension resolves is really interesting because we started using Docker with the CLI, right? So we had the CLI to interact with the Docker system and gather data from all of our containers. But the CLI is really good at giving information only when we ask about the information. But there's something else that we can do. And the CLI also needs us to remember the commands that we need to ask for the data. So to remove that friction for developers, because we're a company for developers, working for developers, so we take that a lot in mind. We build Docker desktop application. So this is a user interface that allows you to interact with all your Docker system the same way you would do with the CLI, but in real time. So you can have just it open, you can see your containers, your volumes, your images, etc. So what's next? So the Docker usage has been for all over the years. We have different categories, different people, different teams using Docker. We have data scientists, cybersecurity, platform teams, backend teams. And as we go deeper, as technology evolves, our software and our infrastructure gets more complicated. And Docker extension is here to reduce the complexity of your developer workflows. So this is what we're here to do. We're going to talk about what extensions are more deeply, and then we're going to create our Flex extension here, some light coding later. So with extensions, you're going to be able to create your own custom add-ons for Docker Desktop. And inside of these extensions, you're going to be able to run Docker commands, run console commands, and use any third-party tool that you use in conjunction with Docker, but inside an extension. So because we're enabling teams and companies and individual contributors to create their own extensions, we have a marketplace, and the marketplace is growing fast. We released extensions almost 3 months ago around DockerCon, and since then we've seen that the number of extensions that we get in the marketplace has increased, and our team dedicates a lot of time to just review the extensions, create pull requests for them, and help them get to their users faster. So now we have more than 50 developed extensions, and from those extensions, there are already 26 in our marketplace. And since we released extensions 3 months ago, we already have more than 75,000 users who use extensions in their day-to-day. So where can I find these extensions? Well, if you use Docker Desktop, you should have them available in your applications. You just go to the extension marketplace that you have in the sidebar, and then you can navigate and go through all the extensions that they have there. In case you want access to all of the other extensions the community is building, but are not available in the marketplace yet, we have a GitHub repo in case you're curious. There's a link there, and you can check it out, all the extensions the community is building. And if you use Docker Hub, we also have that available. We're going to check it out in a second. How does it look, the hub? So if you use Docker Hub in your day-to-day, you can click on Explore. You can see all the images that you have. And we have this filter now that is called Extensions. If we click on here, we're going to see all the extensions that we have in our marketplace. You probably can see some familiar names, some products that you might use. So there's a variety of categories here to help you with testing, with APIs, with your cloud environment, and some utilities as well. In our team, we also build extensions for us. So I really like these extensions that we develop, which is called this usage, because I forget all the time the command to prune my container, my images, and I install lots of images in my laptop, and I forget that they're there and they're occupying some space, and I always forget how to reclaim the space. So just to install the extension, we can click on Open in Docker Desktop. It's going to open my Docker Desktop application right there. And the extension is going to be open. I can then just click on Install. It's going to take just a few seconds. And once it's installed, we can see how to interact with the extension. Just a couple of seconds. There you go. So we see here the marketplace, and in the sidebar, we can see that we have the extension still in beta phase, but fully working. And now there's this usage extension that we installed. So we can see that we can interact with it. It's going to show you the same information that we can gather with the CLI commands, but in a more beautiful way, and in a way that we can, like, in a glance, see what's happening and reclaim the space. So if I click on reclaim space, it's going to just ask me, what do I need to remove? What do I want to remove? And then if I click on delete, everything's going to get deleted. All right, so this is an example of an extension. And now I want to dive back and see what's happening here under the hood. So under the hood, we have this extension UI, which is, in this example, in this diagram, is empty, because that's the one that we're going to build later. And the extension UI can communicate with the Docker engine, as we saw with the disk usage extension. The same way the Docker desktop communicates with the Docker engine. So you're going to be able to create your front end that communicates with Docker engine, but you're also going to be able to create another backend that interacts with your front end that you created and have a three-way communication where you can have smart ways of displaying data to the users. So this is going to allow people to improve their workflows. If you have a use case that you think you might be your particular use case, please share your extension with others, because we found that the extension that worked for some people also worked for somebody else. So yeah. This is what we call all this set of tools, the extensions SDK, that's made for developers. And apart from all the things that you can do inside the extension, we also provide some CLI commands that you can use to initialize your extension. This is the most important one at the beginning, because it's going to create a template for you, so that you don't have to worry about bootstrap your extension. It's going to be already there for you. You can list your extension for sure. You can install them, uninstall them, and enable debug mode, which is really cool if you want to see what's happening inside of the application. We have a documentation website here with all you need to do to create your own Docker extension. To quick start, it's going to do the same thing that we are going to do now, execute the initialize command. And what's important here is that, well, an extension is basically a Docker image. So if you know how to build a Docker image, you're going to know how to build a Docker extension. But we have one particularity, that is this file called metadata.json, which we're going to see in a minute. This file allows us to just place all the files that you're creating for your extension in the right place so that it works inside Docker Desktop. Here is going to have you also more documentations about how to build your extension, how to publish once you're finished with it, how to publish it into our marketplace as well. And we also have this design guidelines, because we ship the initial template with a React template for the front end, and we use React in conjunction with Material UI components. So we also ship a theme that you can use, so that you don't have to worry about styling at all, and still have the same look and feel that we have inside Docker Desktop. In case your extension has more complicated stuff like authentication workflows and so on, we also have the cover for you. And in case you need something that is not here and you feel like it should be, please don't hesitate to reach us out. We're always adding stuff here in case you need it. All right, so just going back, I think it's time for us to create our own extension, right? Let's go. All right, so we're going to start from the terminal, and we're going to do Docker extension init command. Is it okay that the font? Can everyone see? Okay, all right. So the Docker extension init command, it's going to ask me about the name of an extension. So I'm just going to call extension demo. And it's going to ask me my hub name and repository in case I want to push the extension later. So I'm just going to place my name, but I won't push anything here today, just because this is asking me for some name. All right, I'm going to leave the same title, same description, and I don't need to worry about anything else. And what it's doing behind the scene is creating an empty Git repository and bootstrapping everything so that our extension is already ready for us. The backend part is going to be a Go backend service that is going to be implemented, and the frontend part, as I said before, is going to be a React application with the theme already in it. So now it's installing some npm packages, and I don't want to wait until half of the internet is downloaded here. So I'll interrupt it. I think I have it, another extension here. It's called Hello Infobip. Yes. So if I go here, you have to trust me that I just did the same command and have the modules installed. So yeah. And I'm just going to open the Visual Code here. All right. So what do we have here? If we look at the scaffolding of the extension, we can see that there's a plain structure with some UI, which is going to be the front-end part of the extension, and some VM, which is going to be the back-end part. We see a Docker compose, and we see this metadata.json that I mentioned before. And this is what we need to place everything in the right place for Docker Desktop. So we indicate that the VM is going to be the backend part, and we're going to use something in the Docker compose file. And then for the UI part, we're going to use everything that is in the UI folder, and it's going to be placing everything in the index.html right there. I won't dive in what's in the backend, but it's just a backend exposing some endpoint that we can reach out, and we'll do that from the front end. So just to see how this extension is built, let me just, we can do Docker build the same way we do with an extension, and we place a name, and everything will get built. But we provide some shortcuts here in this make file so that you don't have to remember all the time what your extension name is and what the tag is, so that you don't have to, like, every time you update it, you update the tag and you forget that you updated and you get errors in your console. So it makes everything easier for you. So if I do make build extension, as you see, it's doing a Docker build, and once it's finished, we can install the extension right now. We have another command for that, which is Docker extension install, as you can see here. But I'm going to run the make install extension so that I don't have to remember the image name and the tag. Now it's asking me if I want to install it. OK. So now what happens is I can list my extensions. I can do Docker extension ls. And I can see that I have the disk usage extension that we installed before, and now this extension that we just installed. So if we go back to Docker Desktop and see what's happened, we have here a new item, which is called my extension. And if we click on it, there's some text there, and there's some button that when I call the button, it's going to call the extension backend, and the extension backend is going to say something, and it's going to place it there in the backend response. There you go, it worked. The backend said hello. So just to dive in, what is happening in the UI part, we have this React frontend, which is basically playing React application. And you can see here that we have the theme provider that I mentioned before, so that you don't have to worry about the components that you saw before. It's already placed right there. And we use components from, if we look at the app.ts, we use components from Material UI. So how can you interact from your extension to your backend onto Docker Engine? Well, we have developed an extension client that does that for you, and we built it with TypeScript so that you don't have to worry about going to external documentation, which you can. That's the one that we saw before. But in the client, you're going to have some explanations to do what you want to do. If we see what the button was doing, it was calling this function, fetch and display response, which it was calling some function inside of the DD client. Let me pull DD client, which is the Docker desktop client, and see what we have inside. We have several options here that we can use. We can communicate with the main Docker desktop application from the UI. Like, for example, let's say that I have an extension where I need to go to navigate to a container logs page. So instead of doing something weird and remembering where the routes are, we can just navigate. And inside of this navigate, we have all these places inside Docker Desktop that you can navigate to from your extension. You can also show notifications, open dialogues, and communicate with the main application with this desktop UI object. But we also have some Docker object, which is going to let you run Docker commands inside of the front end. Well, not inside the front end, but call them from the front end and run it from the Docker engine. And you're going to also be able to communicate with your extension, as it does here, to fetch the hello endpoint. And you're going to be able to also run commands the same way that you do it from your command line. For example, let's say that you want to install some binaries and have them in your container. You can just call them from here. So to see that it's working, we can just change this DD client call to something else. And let's do, list the containers that I have on my system. So if I change this, now I need to install the extension again. We have a command for that, which is docker extension update, which builds the extension again and updates the extension. So I'm going to be using, again, the make command, make update extension, which is going to run that command for me. Now it's building the extension again. And installing it. So if I go back here and I call the backend, I see a different response because we changed it and now it's fetching all the containers that I have on my Docker system. And we can see some IDs, names, images from the containers and everything going on there. So that's another way that you can communicate with the Docker engine through, through this file here. But you're thinking now, okay, so every time I'm making a change, I need to build the extension again and update it. But if you're just changing the front end, you don't need to do that. You can also have some hot reload that we can enable in the extension so that you have to go do that again. Let's enable first debug mode so that we can see in Docker Desktop what's happening behind the scene, and then let's going to do the hot reload. So we have two commands for that, which is docker extension dev debug. And this command is going to receive two parameters. One parameter. The first one is going to be the name of the extension, which is hello Infobip. And it enabled debug mode. So now if I click on the extension again, that's so cool. The developer tools will open, and it's just the frame of the extension so that you don't see anything else but your extension. If we can inspect what's happening inside here, you see that we can check everything that is going on inside and change anything that we want. And we can also, in sources, if we search the app file, is this one that I have it opened. So yes, so in case we want to add breakpoints, we can. In case we can change some CSS, we can. And in case we can debug your extension, we can do it straight from here. So now let's enable the hot reload mode. And that's another dev command that we have. And this one is called UI source. And this UI source command accepts two parameters, the name of the extension and some URL that is going to take us to change the front end to something else. So I'm going to set it to localhost 3000. And now the UI source for the extension is going to be localhost 3000. So if I go back to the extension, there's nothing there because I don't have anything on my localhost machine. So if I open another terminal and then do npm start from the UI folder, it's going to bootstrap the React application, start the development server in localhost 3000, and now I have something. So if I go back to the extension and navigate back again, there you go. It's loading the extension right now, but in a way that every time we change the code, it's going to be hot reloading, and we don't need to build the extension again. So if we click on call backend, we have this list of the containers, but we can also change it and list the images, for example. And if we go back again, you see that the output is different, and the output is now the list of images, and we didn't need to build the extension, but just save the file and navigate back to the extension again. So that's how you, from the extension, communicate with Docker Desktop, communicate with the Docker engine, and communicate with your local backend. What else can you do? If we have time, yeah. So another thing that you can do is bring up some third-party tool into Docker Desktop. So what I'm going to do now is bring a third-party tool that I use a lot in my day-to-day, which is VS Code. So in order to do that, I think there's an image. I can go to Docker Hub and explore an image which is called Code Server. This Code Server image is just VS Code inside of a server, and I can run it from my local host. So in order to install this, I think they suggest doing that from a Docker Compose file. And yeah, this is the recommended way. So I'm just going to copy everything in here. I'm going to open the Docker Compose file and create another service for Docker Desk for VS Code. I'm going to remove all the optional parameters because I don't want authentication and everything. And for the volumes of the configuration, I'm just going to change this to config. And also, I'm letting them know that the workspace is going to be available so that I can access to the code that I have. And if I do the update extension because I changed the Docker Compose file, I do need to build the extension again. Now it's building the extension with the backend taking this into account. So in the meantime, well, this is fast. We're going to change the front-end application so that we're not displaying anything like that anymore. We're going to display just a plain iframe. Title, let's place VS Code. And the source is going to be HTTP, localhost, and I cannot remember the port, which is 8443. All right. I'm going to set it some style so that the height is 700 pixels, for example, and width 100%. And close the iframe. That's it. So yeah, that was fast. All right, I didn't expect that. So yeah, what happened here is that the extension was built under the hood while I was changing the front-end code. So it was already having that in place and having Code Server installed. And as I was doing the hot module reload enable, and the extension was up, so it picked up VS Code, and now we have VS Code inside of our extension. So I can just navigate away from the extension, come here, and we can see VS Code is inside. We have the debug mode enabled here from the developer tools, and we can access code. We can even access the code from our extension from the extension itself. So we can just do some changes here in the code in case we need to. So that's one example of a use case that you can have some third-party tool that you can bring into Docker Desktop. So you can think about databases, testing, APIs, everything that you can think of that you use in conjunction with Docker. You can just bring the tool and use it from Docker Desktop. Right, so going back here, this is just the beginning for extensions. So we're just placing an extension UI so you can have everything that you want inside. But we're going to improve the extensions SDK from the next months. And we're listening to you. In case you build extension, please share them with us. Don't hesitate to ask us any question because we are there for developers. And we're going to be building more stuff for developers. And it's exciting to see how products are building their own extension, databases are building their own extensions so that they can reach out more users where they need, which is in the developer tools. And it's also exciting to see what the community is building for extension. And if you follow us on social media, check out in Oktoberfest because we're doing some great things for extensions as well. I'm placing these links in case you want to check them out later. In my Twitter account, you're going to have the talks available, and thank you so much for coming here today. I hope you learned something else about Docker.
Who has a question for Lucas? Anyone? I'm curious, what are customers asking for?
Well, mainly databases is our main concern right now. People are requesting how to access their databases in a better way because they run the databases in containers and they don't know how to access their data or connect to the databases in the first place. So they need something else, like at a glance, just spin up the databases and check out things.
So is that on your agenda for what you're looking at doing?
Yeah, we have some extensions that we're reviewing now for databases, and we have also some community extensions that are built for certain databases as well.
Any other questions from the audience at all? Okay, one more thing you're hearing
Yeah.
from customers about what are they asking for developers?
We really like the utility tools that we have because it lets us improve the way that users are interacting with Docker right now. Like for example, this logs extension explorer is really good, that it's going to enable you to see the container logs in a better way. And we also developed the backup volumes backup extension, which is really cool because if you're thinking about some database with data that you have, you can now share the volume with other people within Docker Desktop. So you can share with other people and push it to some registry. Some other person in your team can pull it back and can access the same data that you have. So this is really useful for teams to just communicate with each other and share data.
Great, Lucas. Thank you so much.
Thank you.